Hello. I did say I was going to do a video, hopefully after I learned how to Zoom, on how to, not how to, it's not a tutorial, it's more of an explanation of the web API interaction with Python that I wrote and posted the other day. So I'm going to go over go over it a little bit more. It's adapted since then quite a bit. Before it was just a console app or a console script that would go to Board Game Geeks, would request information from Board Game Geeks API, and then print it to the console. And now I have it. There's still a lot more work to be done, but I have it so that it goes into an actual database. So you don't have to actually duplicate it anymore. And there's still a lot of stuff that probably needs to be done. It still always requests information from Board Game Geek, and I need to write something where it will check the database and then request information only if it's not already in the database. Here it prints to the database, or it enters the data in the database if the ID doesn't exist. But if it does exist, it just skips it, and it shouldn't be too hard to change that. So I'm going to go and get started with both of these. BGG is Board Game Geek. BGG app is going to be, was supposed to be a graphical user interface for it, but I'm not going to do that just now. It's way too simple of a script to make a GUI for. I don't think it's worth it, even though anyway, most of the time I'm doing this stuff, it's just a practice. Like, I want to say that it's, let me open this. I want to say that, okay, so it's a long script. Sorry, I'm just getting this desktop set up. I want to say that the scripting, it's just a practice, and part of when you write a Python script or any kind of scripting is to save tedious work and automate the boring stuff, as that Python book actually says. So that only works if you can script really quickly. So if I can go to Board Game Geek and copy paste all the data fields faster than it would take me to work on this script, then I should do that, right? Because it's all about efficiency. So in this case, it doesn't work that way because it did take me a long time to write this, but I'm still getting, I do it mostly to keep up and stay loose with it. My programming skills are pretty awful, and as you can see, I don't put enough notes. I slapdash things together. I do really bad practice things like catching exceptions and just passing rather than fixing that exception somewhere in the code. You're never supposed to do that. So you're supposed to catch an exception and then fix that in the code so that you rarely get that exception. I don't do that too often. I'm not, no one would really. This is a slap together, and I try to get like functioning code that works consistently, and if it does, I move on. So this isn't something I would call like production code or anything like that. It's just a script that runs through something really quickly. So let me just show you how it works really quick. This is BGG API, and this is the file that has the functions in it that goes and gets. This is the file that actually runs. So it has functions in it that goes and gets the data and then enters it into a database, for example, right here. Let me go over this. So, boom, I can zoom in. Look at that. So, here are my import statements. It's importing a couple little Python packages. Most of them come with Python, actually, if you take a look, which is nice. I didn't have to download any other packages, even though I use the Anaconda Continuum Python that has all the scientific Python packages for machine learning and financial time series stuff, all that crazy stuff that I don't actually know how to do. This video is taking a long time. So here we go. So your URL lib comes with Python. All this comes with Python except this one, XML2Dict. Now, XML is extensible markup language, and a lot of APIs will release their data in different formats. The most common you see are like XML or JSON. And Python has things, packages that'll automatically parse, which means to go through and get the pieces you need. Will automatically parse XML or JSON. And I could use an element tree. That's one of the things in Python's standard package library that will make some kind of data structure called a tree, which is what XML is already in, so that you can move through it and get the pieces you need. But I use XML2Dict to just quickly turn the XML into a dictionary because Python's dictionaries are so much easier to use. And sometimes that causes problems, I think, with certain exceptions like Unicode exceptions or data type exceptions, I think. But if you catch them and pass them like you're not supposed to do, you can work your way around it. So these are the import statements. Now here are different functions. They're in green: get BGD data, get game ID, get BGD data with ID, and main. When you're writing a script, you always have a main function, and that's the one that actually runs. So when I go to the console and I type in, and I type in this function with and give it a game as an argument, this is what runs. It'll do the list of games, or it will run the get board game geek data function with what I pass, the game that I pass. Then it will make a list out of get game ID, list of games. So this function returns a list of games, and that gets given into get game ID so that it will just grab the unique ID, and then for each item in this list, do the big get board game geek data with that unique ID. So the first one is like allows you to search, and I'll show you. Let me show you what I mean by that. So here we go. I'm going to go to Board Game Geek and use their examples. Here you go. So you create these URLs, boardgamegeek.com/XML API search, and then you give it a parameter. Search is the keyword. Parameter, crossbows, and catapults. Now that's a game. So when you search, though, there's a bunch of board games that get returned. Board game, XML. This is what I meant by a tree. See, there's the root. Here's all its children. Board game, and it gives you these IDs. So one of these function goes in and just grabs all these IDs, and then we use those IDs to get all the information here, because it's harder to write a script where you can pick the game you want based on the title, because when you get these results, say a game like Settlers of Catan, for example, let me just go straight to that. So, oops. Let's just go straight to that. Settlers of Catan. When you're doing URLs, the space character is not actually there. You have to put %20. So I press that. There you go. So there's all these games that have a title similar to Settlers of Catan. Catan Geographies, Settlers of America, all these different games. So how do I know which one I want to get? The API actually has these IDs, so you have to do both. And you don't know the ID until you do the search. So then you can, once you have the ID, you can access it like this. boardgamegeek XML API board game ID. So this is for a game called Hexpack. So these scripts grab the minimum, maximum players, playing time, grabs the age, grabs the description, and then it grabs all the board game mechanics. Because I could do publishers. I don't think that's that important. In fact, one of the things I really wanted to do with the script is go to WorldCats API and grab the Library of Congress tags that us librarians use, to the subject tags that we use to link games together. So say it's a zombie game, all the games that have to do with zombies would be tagged with zombies. They work just like tags on social media, so that you can find, say you like Dead of Winter but you want another zombie game like Zombie Dice, you can say, oh, Dead of Winter has the subject zombies, what else has the subject zombies, and then you get all the games that has zombies as a subject. But that's a lot harder because the WorldCat API I'm still learning how to use. That's going to take a lot longer to figure out. Anyway, that is where I'm getting the data, all this crazy stuff. Sorry, I zoomed in too much. Okay, so let's go back. Back to this. So let's describe what actually happens. Get boardgamegeek data. Game equals none. So this is the first thing that runs. Get boardgamegeek data, game. So you give it a game, or it's a string. A string is in quotes like this. Like that. So you would pass that into the function, and then this program says if is instance. That means I'm trying to see what type this is. If what is passed is a string, then go to this URL, http URL blah blah, request equals URL open, and get it. That means request the HTTP, raw XML equals just read it into this. This also prints out the URL so you can click it. Should maybe add that to the database. That might be a good idea. And then it returns the raw XML, just raw everything. The stuff that it goes to that file, grabs all that data, pulls it in. It's messy, it's big, it's all the XML. So then we have another thing that says get game ID. So you pass the raw XML from this function into get game ID, and then we parse it. So I use XML to dic, XML to dictionary, parse raw XML, board games, and then I parse through it. So each root is board games, and then each child is called board game. So board games equals just the board games list. Here's the regular dictionary. Games list is a regular list. That's because we're going to use these later. For every item in board games, see how it highlights it? For every item in board games, assign to this variable the object ID. So we're getting the ID. Then also assign to year published and assign to title. So for every item, we're going to grab the year published, the name, and the object ID. Now, we also print it. Try to print this in this dictionary, right? Try to, so that we can see everything. And I'll show you when that runs where that function prints out. We'll see it prints out right before it does anything. Accept a Unicode error, and then return the list of games, right? So what we're doing is making a list of these dictionaries. This is a dictionary in Python. It has a key and a value. So here's the key, here's the value. These are the variables we assigned over here. So game ID is a number, title is the string of the title, year published is the year published, game list append this game. So try to take this game and add it to the list. If you can't, pass it. Don't worry about it. Move on. Return this list. Then that's the list we use down here, right? For every item in that list, get the data, which is this longer block here. Get boardgamegeek data with ID. So here it is. We go past that game ID, which is what we do. We take that list and we go for every item in game list, use the item and get game ID, right? So each one of these has an ID. We pass that to this. So basically this function takes a little bit of takes some numbers together. You know, a game ID could be like 1045567, something like that. And it'll just take that and then it builds a new URL, board game, gets all that data, and then we parse it. So here we go. Same thing, data dict equals XML to dictionary parse, the raw XML. Then we take the game, get the board games, and then assign these variables. For the board game, we're going to grab the year published, the minimum players, maximum playtime, maximum playtime, the recommended age, the description, and the title. And we're also going to grab the mechanics. So mechanics actually have to go through like this because it's a little bit silly. Then we make a dictionary as well. There's a key error. That means some of the titles are strings and some of them are dictionaries. So we try to get the title from a dictionary. If there's a key error, which is what happens if it's not a dictionary, then we make the title a dictionary and then do the same thing. Pass it along. I'm going over all this. I don't even think you guys need to know all this. Basically, no one's going to watch this anyway, so I'm going to keep talking. Let's see. For every item in the dictionary, so that XML that I showed you earlier, there are like numerous board game mechanics for some of them, right? So I have to say for every item in the XML, get the board game mechanic, and if it's a string, add it to a list. If it's not a string, or no, if it's a string, add it to a list. Here it says if the list is not already, if the item is not already in the list, add it to the list. If it otherwise, just add it. I usually, this is all comments. These little hashtags are comments for code that I used to have that I'm editing. It's kind of my bad version of exactly that versioning. So when I say versioning, people use Git, and I just haven't done that yet. So I need to figure out how to do that. Not that I'm ever going to really need it in my line of work. So a lot of errors can possibly happen. Here we go. I try to get all these errors. One of the things you can do is accept errors that come up and just accept a general error like accept pass. That will catch errors and just keep running the code, which you don't want to do, because if there is an actual error, you need to know what it is. So I go accept an HTTP error, which is sometimes with APIs, they don't want you to steal all their data, right? Somebody worked really hard to put all that onto a database, and that's boardgamegeek's product. So I don't want to do that anyway. I just want to put some of these things together for a library of games that I have. And sometimes they block you if you do too many calls at once. So if I call to their API 30 times, they're just going to stop. They're going to give me like an API error that says you don't have access to the server anymore. So then I tell it to sleep a little bit. This means just wait 10 seconds and then do it again. That usually works. Sometimes you get this same Unicode error. That's actually too, I'm not going to go into Unicode errors. A connection reset, that's another thing. I try to get it to sleep. Sometimes it does that. And then otherwise, if I'm only catching these three and another error occurs, Python will automatically throw me the exception so I can see it. I'm not actually skipping any other exceptions. Let's see. So yeah. Let me run that and show you. So here I am in command prompt, and I have to switch to that though. Let's see, I think it is in PyCharm projects. Yep, it's this item, BGG. So here we go. Here are those files. BGG API, BGG DB game database. So what I'm going to do is just run it. I'm going to go Python, the file, and then I pass it a game name. So let's see, I am going to pass it, let's do Dead of Winter, and press enter. There you go. Whoa, it's going crazy. There are a lot of Dead of Winters. Look at all of that. So this is what you get in the console. It's actually showing you what it's giving you. Here you go. Here's that first thing I said. Remember, get all these information, the ID, the title, and the publishing date. That's so you know which one you're looking for, right? I own this game. So if I want, I can then just run, I could run the get game data with ID using just this number instead of going through all of this. But this particular script runs through everything. So here it goes. It's saying, here's the URL. For this board game, here's the data. Age 14, description, ID, mechanics. It's a hex encounter. I don't know what mechanic that is. It's something to Google. Players 2 to 2. Sometimes it'll say 1 to 6 or whatever. Playtime 360 to 360. So sometimes the data is not totally accurate. Board Game Geek will. That's from Board Game Geek. Like they don't have exact data. So this is saying that it only knows it takes 360 minutes. Title's Dead of Winter, the year 1989. Here, this is a function from the database. So I have a database function, and it says if this ID exists in the database, don't do anything. Otherwise, add it. And this is how I know what happened. So it says this does not exist. So it's entered into the database. And then it moves on to the next game. Here's the next URI. See, 35477, 35477, right? So if I'm looking for what happened with this one, 150376, I need to go through and find it. Here you go, 150376, age 14, description. Now, I need to write a function that cleans out all the HTML from the description, right? Because it's just going to grab all that stuff. But right now I don't need to worry about that, so I'm just moving on. ID, here's the mechanics. Action point, area movement, hand management, storytelling. 2 to 5 players, 45 to 210 minutes. Dead of Winter, a crossword game, published 2014. Unique ID already exists in the database, so I already got that game in there, so it's not going to add it. Anyway, it goes through and 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 goes through. Right? Great. So here's the files for the database. In Python, you can create a database by using SQL. So from SQLite 3, that's the package that interacts with the database. This is a small database. It's not MySQL. It's not MongoDB or PostgreSQL. It's just SQLite is a database that sits on a file in your just in your regular. It's not on a server. So I'm losing the vocabulary for a second. It's just regular in your regular file system. It's not. You don't have to run a database server to use it. So here's the code to connect to the database, and then here's the functions. Create the database. Create the table. If it doesn't exist, games. And games is made up of a couple rows. So a database looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet, and the rows, not the rows, but the columns are all these things, and you tell it what it is. So I have a column for game ID, title, published, players, playtime, age, and description. They're almost all texts except for the age and the game ID. Those are integers. And this is a primary key, so that means this is the key to the table. These need to all be unique. And if I were to use another table to join with this, I would join on this game ID, which I might have to do for mechanics later, like write a function, you know, def mechanics data. That's how you do notes to yourself. I guess in Sublime Text it doesn't tab over twice. Tabs are spaces, guys. I don't know. Here's the data entry, which is called by this API. So if I go down here, right here, actually here's where I import that module. Import from BGGDB. That's right there. Import the data entry function. Here it is. Data entry function. Down here, I call it data entry x. X equals get the data. So get boardgamegeek data. Let's see. Returns a dictionary, right? Return game. Game is a dictionary. So get boardgamegeek data, returns a dictionary and assigns it to X, data entry, and passes X. X is a dictionary. See, data entry is expecting a dictionary. So connect to the database, and then make a list of all the variables in the dictionary, ID, players, title, and then run some SQL. So select the game ID from games. TN here is just a variable. Select game ID from games, where the game ID field equals the first part of this list. If that exists, print unique ID is already in the database. Else, print it does not exist, it was entered into the database. Actually, I could change this. I'm going to change this to game field list. Yep. So that way it'll say, rather than saying none does not exist, which is what we got before, it'll say the ID entered into the database. If it does not exist, run this SQL. Insert into games, game ID, title, published, player, blah, 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 values, and then here you pass the list, all these different values, and it enters the database. Great, right? So that's what happens. Let me show you the database. So this opens with another program that enters. It's like an SQLite manager. Here's my database. Views, triggers. I haven't written anything for that. I guess this will let me because I can open a database and make new databases. A lot of times you use some kind of software like this to create databases rather than programs. Anything that makes you more efficient. So MySQL actually has a really good one that's called MySQL Workbench. Postgres has one. Most databases have just a GUI that lets you interact it, so you don't have to do a lot of this stuff. This stuff is for fools, man. In fact, copy paste your data into Excel if it's faster. Anyway, so here's the schema for the database. And here's the key, game ID, title, published. These are all the rows. And I can browse the data. It's going to look just like a spreadsheet, see? So look how big it is now. And here's some of the games I've already searched. Betrayal at House on the Hill, all these different Dead of Winters, right? But I want the one from 2014, so that's right. It's actually called Dead of Winter, a Crossroads game. Right there. There's actually Kodiak Cold, but these are all expansions to Dead of Winter, and they're all added in here now, and they all have their own unique IDs. King of Tokyo has a bunch. Betrayal at House on the Hill. Look, there's one from 1999 called An Evening of Murder, Dead of Winter. Catan Telepathy, Logova Dvorsnuk. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so here's King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo Halloween, King of Tokyo Garfield's gift promo card. There's a lot of data in there, and some of them don't have everything. Like Deep Pioneer fan expansion for Settlers of Catan. Sorry, I did do Catan, or Settlers of Catan. This one, I think, is it. And it's formerly, if I go to the description, here's the description. See, in Catan, formerly Settlers of Catan. So actually, Board Game Geek thinks of this as Catan. I don't have a table for the mechanics, so that's just wasted. But I do have all of this. So I could delete this whole database and then run this code for each one of these games and get get new games in this database. And I could also, one of the better parts, I think I can actually grab one of these and export a CSV file, which is awesome because that would be the easiest way for me to get it into Excel. And once you get it into Excel, you can then import a list of these games as a list. Oh man, if only I had the LOC tags on it. You can import a list of this into SharePoint, which is what my library uses, and we can access it that way and search the list, because lists in SharePoint are searchable. Because you can import an Excel spreadsheet into SharePoint, right? Great. Wow, this is like a 20-minute video or something, probably longer. Let me show you one more time, or one more thing. I'm going to run it for a game I don't have in here yet. So I did Dead of Winter, King of Tokyo, Settlers of Catan, Betrayal at House on the Hill. Let's do another really fun game called Shay Geek. Here's all the files together. Don't need that anymore. So I don't need to show you this code either. Let's just go straight to the prompt. Okay, so Python Shay Geek. Whoa, look at all that, crazy. So let's go all the way to the bottom and see what happened. Does not exist, entered into database. Does not exist, entered into database. Does not exist, entered into database. So all of these, I think, were just entered into the database. This obviously can be tweaked. It would take more time to just pick, except the mechanics, obviously, those are not entered into the database. Dead of Winter. That's interesting. Oh, I went too far up. I'm reading the old Dead of Winter ones. It looks like Shay Geek didn't have that much. I wonder where. There we go. Shay Geek, Shay Geek. German expansion. Ooh, German. So great. And what I said before was you want to just enter the game that you have, which is harder to do. The other thing I want to try to do is write another thing that just takes a list of games, right, and does that. So that function that searches for games, when you type it here, one of the things I'm going to do is so that I can, the part that's going to automate this the most is I'm going to take a list of games, every single game I guess my library has, and then I'm going to write a little script that just goes through for every item in that list. Do this, right? So it'll, for every item in that list, just boom, 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 go through and do each item, and you're going to get a massive database full of stuff. So before I do that, I need to write a script that only grabs the one you like. It'll give you. Sorry, there's a lot of Shay Geek. It'll give you this list, and then it'll only grab the one you know you want. You know, oh, okay, I know I want the 2014 or the 1999 one. And then, so you'll save time and not fill the database with a bunch of garbage games you don't actually have. And I'm only calling it garbage because it's data that you don't need. So, yeah, I'll do it one more time. Let's say get bit. That's a game, right? Look at that. Crazy. Something about a shark. Does not exist. Entered into the database. Get bit. Shark expansion. I really need to do some of these mechanics. That's the most important part of any games database, right? Mechanics, so that you know, ooh, I want a game where we're playing with cards, or I want a game where we're rolling dice. That I need to enter. These other things, not that important. Dolphin Die expansion? That's terrifying. Okay, so now let's show you the database. Oops. I move around too fast. Look at how big my database is now. 43 instances. Catan, Croc, Geek, GetBit. All these things. Also, I learned how to zoom. Boom. Zooming in. That should make it easier for you guys. I'm going to try this now. Let's try to go back. Export this as a CSV. And I'm going to put it on my desktop real quick. Sorry about that. That's loud. And close all that. That's the end of that. Here's the game CSV. Excel automatically opens it. Look at that. Cool, huh? Ooh. Well, Excel tries its best to determine what something is, right? So the playtime here says 0 to 0. That doesn't think, but here it's telling me it's like April 7th, or somehow it thought it was a date. That's not actually what's there, so that needs to be fixed. Here's the titles. Man, these titles could be fucking goofy. Like this. Look at all these crazy non-ASCII characters or whatever. Or not Unicode characters. Catan Geography, Croc, Green Zombies, look at all these Dead of Winters. From here you make a table, sort all your stuff. Look at that. You can do all the crazy cool Excel stuff. No, I don't want this. And actually, I like my database, so I'm going to dump this in the trash. And that's all, I think. Thank you for making it through this incredibly long video.